we talked a little bit about the science of change and leading through change, and I want to change directions a little bit and talk about maintaining buy-in. And Bill, this question's for you, is difficult conversations. You know, how do you have that difficult conversation on your team? What advice do you give in handling that?
Yeah, you know, especially when you're trying to maintain buy-in, but maybe, you know, something's not going the way it needs to go, or somebody's not performing the way it needs to. It can always feel like, oh gosh, if I've got to go and have that difficult conversation, that's going to derail performance. But if you think of your most exceptional leaders, if you think of your great coaches, they would give you feedback. You know, they would let you know if they were disappointed in you, and you'd walk away from that conversation thinking, okay, I want to get better. And that has a lot to do with that trust factor, because you trusted that they were doing it with your best interest in mind. So if you're walking into a conversation where you have to give, and it might be a peer who's fallen behind on a project, or it might be a client you have to give some difficult feedback to, whatever the situation is, if you don't know whether that trust exists or not, or even if you know it does, you want to clarify it. It's basically what Joel said. What's the reason? Clarify a positive intention for the conversation. In other words, at the end of the conversation, I want our working relationship to be better. I want you to have stock options and, you know, have the wealth that you're interested in, or I want our team to be as successful as it can be. So if you can approach a conversation and clarify a positive intention, then the person starts to feel less threatened. They don't feel like, oh my gosh, this person's here to tell me I'm not good at this, or get me in trouble, or, you know, oh, I feel safe now, and I can now hear the feedback. So it's that idea of clarifying a positive intention.
Very helpful, and that made me think about Lisa, in your experience in leading your team through change. Staying focused can often be hard when you're trying to maintain buy-in, and I know you're very goal-oriented. I wonder if you can share experiences about how you stay focused to motivate your team.
Well, I think when it comes back to what Bill was talking about, I don't know if you use emotional intelligence, but I'm always telling my teammates to remove the emotion from whatever the situation is in order for us to achieve our goals. And sometimes when you talk about giving feedback to groups or trying to stay motivated, people like all the fluffy part, the fun part, the positive things, but no one really wants to hear the negative or the negative feedback. So I use little nuggets like a sandwich. I always think, give them something positive. Then in the middle of the beef of the sandwich, you give them the negative, and then you finish with the positive again. And then people usually hear most of the positive, and they'll hear the negative, but they don't just, when you start out with just the negative first, or this is what's wrong, or what you're not doing well, people walk away with that. And then we all have so many different types of behaviors and learning behaviors where you're not sure if, you know, some people are a little bit more emotional, and that all they hear is the negative. They didn't hear the 3 positive things you said. All they heard was the negative, and then you lose them. And a few examples I have is just being on my team. I remember my teammates, we have a group meeting, and everybody's sort of saying, hey, you know, just tell me what you think. It doesn't matter. Tell me what you think. If you have a problem, you have an issue with me, just tell me. I can take it. And usually when you get the group together, everyone's saying like, oh yeah, I'm not sensitive. It's okay. Tell me. And then when you get into the moment of the heat of the battle, whether it's, you know, trying to get the project done or trying to finish something, and it's time to say, hey, Joel, you're being a slacker right now. Like, you're really not getting the job done. That's probably not going to go over well. And Joel might not be able to finish the project just because of the fact that I just called him a slacker in front of the group. And so what I found is, just through communicating and trying to motivate people, is that the interpersonal relationship is just as important as the whole relationship as a team. And for me to get a chance to say, hey, Joel, what do you need help with? How can I help you? Bridget, what do you need? Maybe I can meet you early and help you finish your project. As we go back to that word trust, as we build trust in this group overall, now in the moment where it's sort of crunch time, I can say, Bridget, I think you can do better than that. And she may trust me because I've been there with her in a moment where she needed me, and I was there on a one-on-one basis. So I think that overall it's important to build that interpersonal relationship where you do build trust with the individual, and then as the group, you make each other stronger. And when you have those times where you need to give a little bit of negative feedback, they can trust that you do have their back. And we're kind of saying the same words, but it just depends on if we're talking about things that are positive, which people get excited about, but you also have to be able to be receptive to being negative, and also as a leader, understand how to deliver a negative message.
And that actually reminds me of a story, Joel, you were sharing with me about the importance of communication, but also being a good leader is about being a good listener. And I wonder if you can share, you had a great story in your operations days about how you had to really hear your team to lead them.
Yeah, so I had a stint where I was in operations, and during my first couple of days there, there was basically a line at my door, it felt like, where people were coming in and saying, I don't know if we can do this anymore. We're spending so much time creating reporting, 80% of our time creating reporting, and working 15 hours a day, and 20% of our time, our night job, we're doing what we should be doing, which is analysis. And you kept hearing that. And I could feel it also, because when I needed some things, it was, well, I've got to pull it from 15 different places and format it and so forth. And so it's all very relevant to what you guys were talking about. First it's listening to them and realizing, well, this is a consistent theme and there's something that we need to do about it. But it's not doing it yourself. It's showing them a path to get to the solution. And so really what it took is, instead of investing in what we would normally do, which is now we need more people to do the same thing for more business leaders, we actually took some of those folks out of the field and created an organization that focused on automation and data, things of that nature, some technology things. And we're talking about 3 or 4 college kids, a consulting project manager, and a really good business leader that changed the lives of not just the operations team, but what we ended up doing is pushing what we thought was important to the business, to the business leaders. So instead of them calling us, I need this, or us calling them and saying, we see this, we push the information to them, so the business now, I like to say, is accountable for running the business. It's not just operations or finance. And that trust, that path to success, it builds the relationships amongst you and your team. It's unbreakable now, and we'll swim oceans together to fix problems.
You know, one of the things I like about what you just said, Joel, is this idea of listening. And we all know how important that is, and we all know how hard that is. And so there's the part of listening where, you know, we have to manage ourselves, right? In other words, we're not just listening, waiting for our turn to talk, or trying to listen to hear what we want to confirm. We're actually truly listening. But in the world of sort of, you know, connecting with people at an emotional level and building trust, we're also listening for, you know, what are the things that are concerning or derailing to them. And in the breakout, I'm going to share a model called SCARF by David Rock, and I'll share the first 2 with you in terms of what kind of things do you want to listen for, particularly when people are struggling through a change. The S is, and these are things that people are concerned about. These are things that might trigger them emotionally and cause them to, you know, resist, derail. The first S is status. So will this change affect how they're viewed? Will this affect, you know, their role? The C is competence, and that's a big one. In other words, will I be able to handle this? Is this too much for me? Or am I going to be in a new role? Or am I going to have a new boss and I'm not going to be perceived? So people want to know, so as you're listening and people are, you know, going through change or being challenged, those are 2 things that you can listen for. And by the way, we talked about this at the table at lunch. This doesn't only work in business. This works with your spouses and partners. This works with your kids, right? We're all these human emotional beings who have these needs. And when they're met, we can be at our best. When we feel those are at risk, that's sometimes when we're not at our best. So you're trying to really help listen in order to help others be at their best. And by the way, if you want the other 3, you have to come to the breakout session at 3.
I know Lisa and Bridgette, you're both very goal-oriented and positive thinkers. And I wonder if you could share how your positive thought, you talked a little bit about this earlier, Lisa. I have to say I'm a native New Yorker, and I'm a cynic at heart. And anyone who knows me knows that. I've tried to be positive, but I know that for you, this is a life experience, a lifelong experience. Your parents were tremendous, your mother sharing positive. I find it challenging often to turn that positive because my cynicism kicks in first. So I wonder if you can help share experience of how that really helps the way you cope. You talk about emotions and listening, but positivity really makes a big difference, I think.
Well, I just have been a firm believer if you believe it and you think it, then it probably is, whether it be positive or negative. So as a kid, I was fed that, so I am just the result of quotes and positive affirmations fed to me from my mom. But I was obviously going to be tall. My mom's 6'3", my dad's 6'4". So my mom would always tell me early on, like, Lisa, sit up straight and you're going to be beautiful. And some people are blessed to be tall and short, and our family's just been blessed to be both. You're tall. And you have to take that, you know, and feel good about it. And so I thought, oh, okay. And then she taught me the 7 Ps, which are, let's see.
You can't forget.
Proper prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. And, you know, it was just important to really be prepared and to set my goals. And my mom would create all these positive boards of pictures she'd pull out of a magazine and staple them, and she'd put a violin in my hand. So of course I thought, oh, okay, I want to play the violin. So I played the violin, and she put a basketball and a gold medal and a model. There are all these things that she wanted for me to be that she didn't say I had to be, but it just reinforced positively that if I think that I want to be these things that I saw on this board, that I could be. Well, I probably accomplished absolutely everything that she stuck up on the board, but it's just the thought that it was positive information that was given to me, and I really ran with it. And then I thought, when I hear my friends say, oh my God, I could just die, like, oh no, don't say that. Oh, this is killing me. Like, no, don't say that, because that could happen because you believe that. So it just sort of turned in me taking that positive information as a kid and applying it to my goals, and I would become a goal setter. I write down my goals. I'd hang them on my mirror and in the refrigerator, and every day I knew I would go to those places at least twice, and I would see my goals, and it just sort of took off from there. And so I've just always been a firm believer that, you know, if you write it down, if you think it, if you believe it, you can achieve it. And you could waddle in the mud and start to stay dirty and all the negativity, or you can get up and do something about it. And that's really sort of been my life motto, and I've been doing something about it ever since.